Welcome to Music is the Drug, the weekly vitamin-enriched Cowboy Junkies podcast that helps keep the doctor away. We've got some great shows coming up over the next few weeks, including an in-depth look at the new album, Songs of the Recollection, to coincide with its release next month. You'll find us at all good podcast outlets, so don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss a single episode. I'm Dave Bowler, and I wrote the biography of Cowboy Junkies, Music is the Drug. Today, with the help of Michael Timmins and Alan Anton, we'll be looking at a song from All That Reckoning. The Things We Do to Each Other is a great example of the way that the two write songs together these days, as Mike explains.
The way our co-writes usually work is Al will send me a groove, certainly a bass groove, and he'll also more and more he'll develop, he'll put some keys on there with some melodic ideas or a bit of structure or whatever, and I'll use that or not use that depending, but it's mainly his grooves and with changes too, with chord changes in there as well. So and I'll take those, and then sometimes I'll take them pretty much straight as they are, or sometimes I'll just take the chord changes and just work on those or whatever. But it frees me up because after writing a lot of songs, and I'm not the most trained guitarist or musician. Like I don't really know music. I can't write music, so I just do it by ear, and I do what feels right, and what feels right you tend to start repeat yourself because you kind of like that chord change, so you go back to it. So without feeding me different changes that he likes, it just allows me to free up a little bit from the music side and just focus on the lyrics and melody. And with this one, this is pretty much, I hardly had to do anything. I just wrote the lyrics and melody to it. But the actual musical structure is pretty much all Al. Even some of the guitar lead parts I stole off of him. That he so it's I just love the groove of it. It's got sort of a David Bowie Heroes vibe to it. I think that's sort of the way I was sort of approaching it. I wanted to keep it really simple lyrically, and just focus on sort of like this the bounce that he provided with the bass.
I suppose in terms of the writing as well, it just must be such a relief not to always have a blank sheet of paper every time you go write a song.
Oh, it's so great. I can just sit and listen to his groove and his changes and just think in terms of lyrics and melody, and not have to start, okay, back to this chord, okay, here's a D chord. I don't even have to think in those terms. And often, sometimes I'll even be using one of Al's pieces and be writing, and not till later I sort of when I kind of transpose it to my guitar, where I realize, oh, this is that song. This is a song I wrote 10 years ago. But it doesn't matter because I've the melody's different now and the lyrics are different and the rhythm's different. But I never would have gotten there by myself because I would have identified it as a song I'd already written, in quotes. So it's very freeing. It's very freeing.
Depending on the song, by the time Mike gets Al's demo, it can be pretty close to the finished article.
I can work up songs at home pretty much to the point where I can bring it into the studio in Toronto and just redo the drums, and then Mike adds his parts and the vocals, and that's it. So it's gotten pretty easy to get pretty good sounds. Really good sounds actually these days in a home studio, and use that. You can either use it as a demo, really great demo, or put it out yourself, like most kids do these days. Or, because we have a history of trying to get it to sound as good as possible, we bring it into our studio in Toronto and redo a lot of it. But yeah, it's great having a home studio to be able to do that in.
Having a home studio has made a big difference to Alan's ability to put down ideas for Junkie songs as and when they arrive in his head.
Yeah, that's really, really crucial, actually. And I'll do that during dinner. Something will pop into my head and I'll say, be back in a minute. And just run down, and 10 minutes later I'm back at dinner. And I find if I don't do that, it just disappears. So I gotta keep on top of that. And sometimes I'll just hum into my iPhone, or if I'm out on the road or whatever. So yeah, catching ideas is like really important for me anyways, because I can't remember them for too long.
When I spoke to Pete about this, he called it a gospel song. He said there ought to be a huge choir in the background or something singing. And it has got that kind of feel to it. It's a sort of a spiritual kind of feel to it, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has that sort of vibe for sure. For me, it was like musically. For me, when I was working on it, I was thinking of kind of a Lou Reed thing, but it turned into more of that gospely thing by the time we finished it. I had it really sparse and simple and not too exciting, I think, at first, and then it got a little more developed into that.
Alan's point about Lou Reed underlines that the song has a feel of 1970s classic rock about it, something that Mike's perfectly happy with.
Yeah, I mean that that era is huge for us. As friends and as musical collaborators. That era we grew up together in Montreal in the early '70s. From certainly from there's a few years in there which we went to hundreds of shows. You could go down to the Montreal Forum. They have these triple bills. It was probably $10 or $5 or something, and you could see like 10cc and Sparks and Supertramp. For $10. All these bands. We didn't necessarily like them all, but they're just fascinating. Bad Company then would come in with Deep Purple and somebody else. And then in the bigger shows, Boy would show up, and we'd get in line, overnight and get tickets, and so we'd see everybody, and we'd go together often, and then we even our record collections we'd sort of share. Somebody would buy the latest whatever, and latest Lou Reed record, and the other guy would tape it, and that was we sort of our like our language developed, the language of how we communicate with music developed over those years, and so those are our strongest years. Over the years we've gone in different ways as far as what we like. People would be what we used to know. He really liked hard rock. Like some of the weird death rock stuff. It doesn't connect with me at all. I'm more where I have more of a blues feel. I go back to the blues side of things. But the center of all that is that '70s sort of classic rock. Of those types of bands, and this being a good example of that.
The Junkies sound has developed over the years, but the more records you make, the harder you have to work on keeping things fresh, be that lyrically or musically.
On the writing side, the lyrics side, Mike is always very attuned to contemporary politics and social issues and all that sort of thing, or personal issues as well. So his writing follows his life basically. Whether it's to do with aging or kids or whatever, whereas the music has to not only fit with what the writing, what the lyrics are about, but like you say, try to find a way to keep it fresh for the band to stay interested in playing. That mostly falls on me and Pete to figure out where we want to go with that stuff, and we're always interested in bringing in new instruments and listening to new things for influences and all that sort of thing. So, we're still very, very much active music fans, listening to lots and lots of stuff all the time. So that's never gone away. And, our playing has gotten better. Obviously, we're better musicians now. So we can think that, we can take on a keyboard part or whatever and pull it off, that sort of thing, or some sort of instrument that we've never tried before. So yeah, it keeps it fun, and it keeps the music interesting for ourselves and hopefully our fans too.
A lot of what you've used recently, it's those old analog keyboards, which just sounds so much better than the modern. They've just got that sound that creates an atmosphere sort of straight away, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. That's what we discovered pretty quickly. It was just I brought in a Vox organ and just basically played one note, and it just sounds so good. You can put it on anything, and you can open a song with it. You can play it throughout a song, and then we started thinking that we should just get a bunch of old analog keyboards in the studio and see what we can do with them. So we got a bunch of stuff, and they're a pain in the ass to keep in tune and maintain and everything, but they just sound so beautiful, so fantastic that you just take one out and you start playing, and it finds a spot in a song almost immediately.
Lyrically, the things we do to each other is pretty pertinent to these very strange times that we've been living through for a while, and which just seem to be going on and on Anon?
It's just it's a real basic plea, you know. I mean, it's a real simple song. There's not a whole lot of lyrics to it, and you know, it kind of repeats itself, I think, two or three times, and that's all it is. It's just I mean, lyrically, to me, you know, the message, you know, again, we don't really do message songs very often, but I think this is probably a message song. It was written quite during height of the Trump era. Trump era version 1. We're about to get version 2, and so it was, you know, it was a very, very, as we all hopefully can still remember, chaotic and kind of terrifying time, especially on this part of the world, sharing a border with that country, and so it's very it's sort of just a plea. It's a direct plea to one another, to individuals. Again, back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, back to those who think and who care and who you know, actually have realize they have a stake in the entirety of how civilization and society runs. It's just a plea to those folks.
You wonder if they quite understand the forces that they're unleashing.
And you can control hate, but only for so long. And when you lose control, man.
Well, you know, you hope that they don't know it, but you kind of fear that they do, because if people are unleashing those forces on purpose just for their own gains, that there's a real evil at bay there.
It's interesting. I mean, COVID, I think, is the same in a way as 9/11, because when it descended upon us, for a little while it was, we're all in this together, and it felt like there might be some sort of a breakthrough, and, you know, all you need is love and whatever. And then pretty quickly, everything just went back to normal.
Yeah, well, you know, I think there's or back to normal or worse. You know, I think it's these crises that people can exploit, right? That's the thing. You're right. 9/11 was very similar. There was a great opportunity to change directions, and instead they became more hardened. And because people, you know, certain people in power realized that there's a lot to be gained personally by exploiting these sorts of things. Then I think that's why there's so many conspiracies as to, you know, whether they were you know, a controlled crises or not, because they do fit in quite nicely to people's power plays. So I don't know. It's you know, we just sort of, we swim along. Hope we don't get eaten.
If we don't get eaten, we'll be back next week to look at another song from the Junkies repertoire. Before then, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss a new episode. You can also like it, add reviews, and tell your friends that we're here. All of that helps spread the word, thanks to computer algorithms or biorhythms or something. To keep up with the band and to pre-order the new album, Songs of the Recollection, head for cowboyjunkies.com. They'll be back on the road again soon too, so you can check for tour dates there as well. If you're a Spotify user, you can follow our growing playlist. Details are in the show notes. We'll be back next week. See you then.
Feeling's not so far from hate, so if you get the folks to feel, it only takes one quick turn to notch it up again. Oh, oh, oh.